Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. And today I've pulled out my wildflower collection from Simple Stories. I'm documenting these photos you can see on the right hand side. It's a collection of 3 photos of Amelia with her face painted like a tiger. And as soon as I saw those photos when I was going through some older ones, I thought of this collection because it has got tigers all over it. And I thought at the time I'm never going to use those tigers. And look, it's the perfect opportunity. So you can see the photos are very bright colours, and normally I would have gone for primary colours. So it's interesting to try something different sometimes, and you don't necessarily have to match your paper colours to the colours in your photos. You can make them work. So I'm just tearing some strips of 4 of the pattern papers that I've pulled out to add as a layer at the top of the page. And in fact, I go for 5 because I do bring in a 6x8 paper, which I use to add to either side of the bottom layer. And I'm just spraying the edges, the torn edges of the paper with water and then curling them up. It makes it much easier to curl them, to roll them really. And it also means once they dry, they set in that position. So they're rock hard now that they're dry, and as I say, it stays rather than curling back. It's almost like using PVA glue. It's a really interesting technique. So just going through, as I say, and tearing each paper. Each paper I'm trying to make the shape slightly different so that they layer really nicely on top of each other. But this piece already had a torn edge, so I'm just making use of the edge that was ready torn on that paper. Just adding a bit more water again and rolling the edges. I don't make you watch this process because it would be the video would be about an hour long. It takes a little while to get those edges rolled up. So just wiping off the water there. And then this is the last paper that I mentioned. I've only got a 6x8 and I have to use a 6-inch side because I want the stripes to go down. So I'm just going to be very intentional when I tuck this under to make sure that the edges that meet aren't showing. So these pictures are from back in 2012, and Amelia had been to the school fair after school, and one of the mums was doing face painting. She did a brilliant job of this tiger. Amelia was so happy. James hated having his face painted, so he refused. I think we've got one photo when he was younger and he realised that he really didn't like it. So just Amelia this time. But he sat and watched. Not very patiently. He wasn't a patient child. He's completely different now. He's grown up. But gosh, he was hard work as a youngster. So just layering up these papers. I'm not actually going to stick them down. I stuck that first piece down without really thinking what I was doing, but I've pulled out a stencil. You can see it on the left-hand side. And I want to add some stenciling to bring down the page behind those photos. So I've already pulled out the inks, and this is where I'm going to try and tie the colours of the photos into the papers more. So I've pulled out the orange is Spice Marmalade and the yellow is Fossilised Amber. I think it's Spice Marmalade. And I've pulled out a Vicky Boutin stencil, and it's like tropical leaves, but I just think that works really nicely with tigers. So using my pencil to mark where those papers are going to go, I'm just pulling them off again so that I can get that stencil laid down flat, and then using my brush to brush the inks through. So I start with the orange, the Spice Marmalade, and I'm going to go right the way across from left to right using this stencil. So I just layer it over. I know that the photos are going to cover the middle, so I'm not too concerned about the pattern not matching, but I still want to make it look fairly neat. So just fiddling there just to check that I'm happy with how I've placed the stencil. And then once I've gone all the way across with this Spice Marmalade, I'm going to come in with the Fossilised Amber. Now I don't have hundreds of different blending brushes for my inks, so I just rubbed that brush off on some scrap paper, and now I'm carrying on with the Fossilised Amber. It really doesn't bother me if my inks get slightly contaminated, as people say, if the colours blend into other ones on the pads. I'm really not that precious about my inks. So now that I've got that background down, I'm just going to come back in and glue these papers down. So I'm being careful just to add the glue to the top edge so that I've got plenty of room to tuck everything else under, because I know that I want them to sit fairly tightly to the top of the page. I say that, in fact, they come down about a third, or if not slightly more than a third of the page, but it provides the effect that I wanted, so that's fine. So just getting these last 2 halves glued in, and then I can start working with the photos. And I do have a little bit of a fiddle and a faff with the photos to decide how I want them to go. I know roughly that I want 2 and then 1 below. but just trying to work out what to do. And I cut this card out thinking I was going to use the sentiment on that, but I don't in the end. And then I think I'm going to use it as a mat, but I don't do that either. So just trying to work out the positioning. But I know I want to use this tiger on the sticker sheet. Like I say, that was the whole start of this layout. So I'm just going to lay it very lightly on the bottom photo so that I don't forget and then carry on. And then I pull out these foam stickers. You can see I've nearly used all the titles now, but there's this little one that says Simply the Best, which will go on the layout in the end, but not at the bottom like I first thought. And then this lovely little square that just says hi there. So those two will go on. So now into the sticker book, and I'm just having a look to see what my options are really, see what I can use. I see this tab and I think I'm going to use that. And I do use it, but not now, because these stickers, once they're down, so you have to be really careful with what you're doing. So I decide that I want to map that right-hand photo just to join it really to the rest of the papers at the top. So just pulling out the first paper that I come to, this lovely pink, and then adding a mat there, and then I'm using the stripy paper to add a second mat. So I'll glue these down, distress the edges. Really didn't cut that very straight, so just straightening that up a little bit. And then just a daub of glue on the back to get those stuck down, use my edge distresser to distress those edges, and then I'll stick it down to that stripy paper. And that just bridges that gap, because I wanted that second photo lower than the first photo on the left. It just bridges the gap above the photo so that it joins it up to those papers. And having that stripy paper means that I can create more or less a continuation. So I do match up the pattern, but obviously I've got the curled edge on the other piece, so it looks really effective. I am pleased with how that turned out. So just getting this left-hand photo tucked neatly underneath those layers. And I'm much happier with the positioning of the photos there now, so I'm just going to start gluing them down. That sticker keeps sticking. I really should have added some powder behind it, so I could have kept going, because the problem with adding a sticker at the beginning is as you want to layer, you're having to keep pulling it up all the time. So I wanted to use this. I hadn't realised that it was actually two stickers. The memories part inside is separate from the book plate, but I decided to keep it all as one. And like I say, these stickers, once they're down, so it went down ever so slightly crooked, but not enough that it mattered, because I knew if I pulled it up I would have ruined it. So there's that tab sticker that I was talking about. I've added to the right hand side, and normally I would use that for the date, but in fact I'm going to use that for the tiny bit of journaling that I add onto this layout. So now pulling out these florals just to add some layers behind the photos. I don't necessarily want them to be seen as florals, it's just adding colour and dimension behind the photos. So tucking this one, I felt that it had to be the other way around, so you're tucking it so that the leaf is underneath. And I'm trying to create a V shape so that everything goes from the 12 inches at the top down to the middle point at the bottom of the layout. So I'm just bringing in more layers to create that V, slowly stepping down into the bottom bit. I love this circle that says no one is you and that is your power. And again, another tiger on it, so that works really nicely. And then this little word sticker is just May, and that was the month that it was, so just using that as another element to add interest. I love this stamp, and in the end I do just use it as a frame, because I will stick that foam sticker on top of it later, but for now I'm just playing about with where it's going to go, and it goes underneath that May sticker on the left hand side. There we go, just checking that it was straight. And then a little label sticker here, and that sort of rectifies that slightly wonky memories piece, because that label sticker's got a slightly wonky box, so it just evens everything out more. This is a date stamp, so I will use that for the date, and you can see each time I'm having to pull things up. I've had to pull that leaf of the flower up, pull the tiger's tail up just to fit that in. So while I remember, I'm adding the date, so I don't end up adding the date to the tab instead. And then I add my journaling, and it just says face painting at the school fair, because that's all I need to say. It was from 2012. My memory isn't brilliant, so I know it was the school fair. She has her school uniform on, so that was enough for me. So a couple of word stickers now from the 12 by 12 sticker sheet. Just check this out and thrilled, because she was really thrilled to have her face painting done. Not so thrilled to have to wash it off. And then this one says hi there. And then one that says live large in that lovely pink that matches all the other pinks at the bottom, and that brings that nicely to a point, that V that I was talking about. You can see how that's come together nicely. And now this is that banner from the foam sticker sheet. I do in the video put it up at the very top there, but I move that down to the yellow roses in the end. You'll see that in the close-ups at the end. And there's that hi there foam sticker that I add to that frame. Just wanting to add a couple more bits at the bottom. So I find a little circle that says happiness. And then back through the book, and there's just one flower left on that floral sheet. So I can't pull everything up to put it under, so I cut it in half and add half to this left-hand side and then the other half to the right-hand side slightly further up. And that really finishes off that shape that I was looking for. I'm so happy with adding that. They're quite thin, these stickers, so you just have to be a little bit careful when you're positioning them. And that's the layout done. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed this. Do leave me any questions or comments that you have. I'm happy to chat to you in the comments. Give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.